Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBO behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBOM. MBOM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBOM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBOM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm so grateful and happy that you are here with me today for this episode of the show where I will be joined by Ashley Zuberi. Before we get into it, though, I just wanted to give a little shout out to this week's sponsor for the episode, Offering Tree. You've heard me talk about Offering Tree a lot if you listen to the podcast regularly, and it's because I absolutely adore their products and services. They are your one-stop shop for everything that you need for your online digital yoga business. Stay tuned because I'm going to talk about them a little bit more later on in this episode of the show. In the meantime, let's get into the episode. Ashley Zuberi trains and mentors yoga teachers to create thriving, independent yoga businesses. She's a full-time yoga teacher with a former professional career in marketing for yoga companies, and she has experience developing and leading teacher trainings across the U.S. She uniquely understands how to blend the spirit of yoga with the realities of business. She's the founder of Inhale Thrive, an organization dedicated to providing high-quality and affordable continuing education, connection, and mentorship opportunities for the global yoga teacher community. She also writes extensively about yoga philosophy as well as the business of yoga. And like all of us, she was faced with the challenges of taking her yoga business online over the last year. And so she's here to talk about taking your business online and why as yoga teachers, we don't have to have anxiety around technology. So on this episode, we talk about the online platforms teachers can use to offer their classes online, as well as how to understand what you're offering and what you want to offer before you can make a strategic choice. We also talk about what you need to actually film your classes and why it's important to keep things simple and match your knowledge level with your technology. And she just gives us some of her top tips around taking your business online. So this is a super valuable episode. I hope that you really enjoy it. And without further ado, here is Ashley. Welcome to the podcast today, Ashley. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
And where are you joining me from today?
I am in Columbus, Ohio.
Amazing. But I'm excited for this conversation today, Ashley, and to just be chatting with you. I want to start a little bit, like go back in time and talk about your yoga story and how you became a yoga teacher and all that goodness.
Yeah, I first actually got into yoga through P90X, which is the workout program from Beachbody. I was in college and I was looking for ways to maintain my fitness. I really enjoyed the yoga portion of that online program. And um, after I finished that 90 days of workouts, I wanted to maintain my fitness levels and thought that I could just continue with yoga. That eventually led me into a yoga studio. I happened to be in Boulder, Colorado, and I was lucky in the sense that there's no lack of yoga in Boulder. And in fact, I was kind of like in a mecca of yoga and didn't even know it. So I was quickly able to find a great community and a variety of practices, wonderful teachers, and I just fell in love with it and never looked back.
Yeah, that's amazing. And at that point, were you teaching or just practicing, or where did teaching kind of intersect on your journey?
So it's interesting. I was really just practicing at that point. I never had any intention of teaching. And then actually, I fell into the marketing and business side of yoga before I got to my teaching. So I was going to school to be a journalist, quickly figured out that's not exactly what I wanted to do, switched to focus on marketing and public relations. And after I graduated from college, I found a job working for Core Power Yoga, actually, in their corporate offices in the marketing department. And that was a really fun and awesome first experience as to have as a job, and also a really great way for me to get my foot in the door in the yoga industry. And then while I was working for that company, I did my teacher training. So that when I was in my teacher training, I had the realization that most yoga teachers have, where I just fell in love with teaching, which was not something that I expected. I did not go into my teacher training with the intention of teaching. It was really more just I love yoga and want to spend more time doing it. And because I was marketing yoga, it was kind of also like, here, why don't you go do this teacher training so you can get a better idea of what it is that you're marketing. And, of course, then my plans changed. And I figured out that I really loved teaching, and my teaching journey started from there.
That's amazing to hear. I love that story. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious kind of what your career has looked like. Like, did you start by teaching at Core Power, or what's been kind of your journey as a teacher?
Yeah, so I did start teaching at Core Power when I finished my teacher training. However, I was at the tail end of living in Colorado at that point. So I think I graduated from my teacher training and ended up teaching for maybe 3, 4, 6 months max before I moved away. And when I moved, there was no Core Power location in Texas at the time where I moved to. And so I ended up finding a really small mom and pop studio in the town that I lived in Texas that I taught at. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, is still in the military. And I knew that we would be moving around a lot, and we have moved around a lot. So I've had the opportunity to teach in a lot of different places, which has been such a blessing in the sense that I've been able to be in front of completely different demographics. Each city, each area of the country has just a different culture. And so I've found that I've had to adapt in very subtle ways how I approach my teaching, just based on the needs of the students in front of me. So even that first transition from going to teaching this very athletic focused practice in Core Power Yoga in Colorado, which was very, well-being minded in terms of the people that were coming into the yoga studio, to this small town in Texas on the border of Oklahoma, where yoga was against people's religion and people didn't really know what it was. That was a completely different experience. And it was a great challenge that I really appreciated. From there, we moved to Arizona. I taught in a spa slash yoga studio. So half of it offered spa services, half of it offered yoga classes. I also taught in a gym. I think it was an Anytime Fitness. And then we moved to Washington, D.C., and I taught in studios around the Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia area. And then we moved here to Ohio, and I taught in studios for a while here when I first moved as well. So I've really had the experience of teaching all over, all different kinds of studios. I've taught in Washington, D.C., a lot of private clients where I went to their homes. So I've done everything.
Yeah, I love it. You have a very diverse background and in many different places too, which
Yes.
I know from just I've taught between like Canada, US, Mexico, and the cultures are very different, even like state to state or province to province, and especially like country to country. And it's really interesting to be able to kind of like bring your teachings into a new place and kind of get a read for like what the vibe's like and what people like in the studios. And the demographics are always very different and what they want is very different. So I'm sure you've learned so much through that experience. And I'm curious, like, what it's been like for you over the last year as the whole world has gone online. What have you done with your teaching and your business?
Yeah, so actually that's really interesting because I went online and started teaching yoga online in 2012. So because at that point I had just moved, I think, to Texas. And I knew, like, looking out in front of me in my career, that we would be moving a lot, like I mentioned before. And I knew that the online space was going to be advantageous for me because it would be challenging for me to build a community long term since I knew that I would be moving. So I started filming yoga videos and putting them on YouTube in 2012. I eventually felt a little bit more settled, especially once we moved to Washington, D.C. And I stopped focusing so much on YouTube and online spaces. But then, of course, when the pandemic hit, I went straight back to kind of go all of those skills that I developed over the years. And in fact, when we moved from Washington, D.C. to Columbus, Ohio, where I am now, I had started kind of building out the infrastructure to offer an online yoga studio. So I was ready for it, or at least probably more prepared than a lot of yoga teachers. But I would say that the pandemic forced my hand. Like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gone online so quickly. When it did happen, I was able to pivot really quickly and put everything online. I had all of the software programs, the scheduling programs, the infrastructure, like I said, in place to do that. And it was relatively smooth for me. And then eventually I just decided that I've got everything in place that I need. It was working, and I went full in online. And to be honest with you, I don't anticipate going back to studios or in-person teaching as my main thing ever. It just works better for me, and the fact that, we have another move coming up in this year. And it's just a lot of work and energy to kind of keep rebuilding local communities. And now that I have a community online, it makes more sense for me to just spend my energy there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so inspiring to hear that you were on YouTube in 2012. So you were sort of prepared for this before it happened.
But also, it took me from 2012 to now to really start figuring out a lot of this stuff. So, if you're really struggling with the online and tech pieces and things, know that there's a learning curve, and give yourself grace and patience and time to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I feel like, I've been running my business online since 2015, and I would have said probably say you would have asked me exactly a year ago, so January 2020, like, hey, if the world was to all go online, like, would you be prepared to support the yoga teachers and the studios that you work with? And I would have been like, yeah, I think I'm good. But I feel like nothing really could have prepared me for like how dramatic it was and how fast it happened and all that type of stuff. But I feel, so grateful that we work in an industry where we can work online. I feel like that's been a major blessing over the last year.
Absolutely. And I think that it has, what I've seen, not only in myself and my own work, but in, the entire yoga industry and with my colleagues, so much opportunity and possibility for creativity and especially for individual yoga teachers, the opportunity to really step into your own authentic voice as a teacher and step out of perhaps the frameworks that are subtle, but kind of overlay how we show up to teach when you have to walk into a studio and adopt the studio ethos, if that makes sense. Like every studio you go into, it has its own way of presenting the teachings. And as a teacher, you have to conform to that in some way. It's different for every studio. Some studios are better about offering you complete freedom, but when you're just on your own, you can do whatever you want. And I've found that really freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice to be able to kind of have like full control over your own business. And I think, of course, it comes with, downsides or maybe not downsides, challenges. And I think the challenges are things like the business side, like the marketing and the promotion and the coordination of workshops and other things that you might offer other than classes and, filling bodies in the class becomes like 100% your responsibility. And I think that maybe there's a lot of that teachers have kind of learned over the last little bit that they didn't realize, like, oh, wow, the studio is doing like a lot to make my class happen.
Right. Of course. There's, yeah, exactly. There's pros and cons of all of it. And there's nothing wrong with having a hybrid, right? Like teaching some of your classes with studios and teaching some things on your own, or teaching all of your classes with studios, if that's what lights you up and provides, what you need. But if you are feeling like you need more freedom, the opportunity is there. The barrier to entry has been obliterated, right? Like anybody can go online and do anything now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think it's one of the beautiful things kind of about, I think this space is that we do have a lot of options as teachers. There's lots of space for us to really find what we're passionate about and what kind of makes us feel alive in our businesses and then go in that direction. And you're totally right. The barrier to entry for online is so small these days. And I think we're going to talk about probably the biggest barrier to entry that I think a lot of teachers experience, and that's the technology piece. So maybe this is a good point to kind of transition into that. And I would love to hear from your experience with doing this, over the last, I guess, 8-9 years of transitioning online and taking aspects of your business online. Where do we start when it comes to taking our businesses online? Like if we're a teacher who's like, I did not become a yoga teacher so that I had to deal with technology, I'm not techie, where do we start?
Well, especially when it comes to thinking about the tech, I think what I've seen in my own conversations with yoga teachers and my mentorship clients and everything is that where do we start? People immediately want to jump to, well, what website should I have, or what platform should I use to upload all of my videos, and what scheduling software do I need, and what social media strategies do I need? And that's the relevant question in everybody's face right now. But I think we need to pull back a minute and start with more of a self-inquiry on strategy, and asking yourself some really important questions about, what it is you want to do, where it is you see yourself going, how you want your business to be, do you want a yoga business in the first place? Because, I think especially because of the pandemic, it put us all in this panic mode of, oh crap, now I have to put my stuff online. And so everybody just went online, and nobody really stopped. Not everybody stopped to ask themselves some like really key questions, like, do I want to do this? And now I have this opportunity to make something bigger out of this yoga business. What is that going to look like? What are the offerings that you foresee yourself sharing? Do you just want to teach drop-in yoga classes? Do you want to teach more in-depth workshops? Do you want to teach teacher trainings? Do you want to lead membership sites? Do you want to have your own yoga studio? Like, these are questions from a strategy perspective that I think are really important for us to ask ourselves and work through before we get to the, okay, now what platform do I need to use? How do I need to build my website? What social media should I be using? Because I think it's really easy for yoga teachers to get sucked down the rabbit hole of the low-hanging fruit, which is, how to market yourself on Instagram. You can go and read a million posts on how to do that and learn that skill set and feel like you're doing something. But if you haven't backed up and really given yourself a plan and a good idea for where it is you want to go, then you're ultimately wasting your time, in my view, because there's very strategic ways to go about building your yoga business, as you know, and diving into the tech just because that's what everybody's doing without having a clear idea of where it is you want to go is going to end up just taking way too much time and energy building things that may or may not actually help you down the road.
Yeah, I really love that you started with that and brought that up because it brings me back to March of last year and just feeling like it's like everyone kind of responded in this like sort of really beautiful way of wanting to help people while they were in lockdown and that type of thing. But I just remember seeing like all the yoga teachers on like Facebook and Instagram live and just like all of our classes are live, everything's free, everything's online now. And it was just kind of like somebody hit the panic button and we all took everything online without stopping to think. And I mean, that is essentially what we did in many cases. And I think that, and I think that, that's great. It's great that we reacted that way. I kind of as a collective whole, but I love the idea of like kind of stepping back from that and being like, do I want to do this? What do I want to offer? Who do I want to serve? And how do I actually want to do it? Because I think that asking yourself these kind of bigger questions is going to help you when you run into challenges with like deciding the website and the marketing plan and have a Zoom issue. Like you're going to understand kind of your why and you have a foundation for it, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah. And it's going to help you choose the right tech platform for you too. So like getting into the actual tech pieces, you, before the pandemic, we're mostly teaching online drop-in yoga classes through yoga studios. And that's something that you still want to continue to do. And you still have relationships with your yoga studios and your yoga studios still exist that you teach for. Then, maybe you don't need to build out this huge, big infrastructure. You need a simple website that can tell people like when you're teaching your online classes, maybe you need some Zoom capabilities. Maybe you need to think about investing in some audio or video technology that will allow you to offer really high quality yoga classes if your yoga studio isn't offering that to you already. So maybe you don't really need to do that much because you're being supported by the yoga studio. But if you are not interested in teaching a bunch of in-depth drop-in yoga classes and you want to do something more like develop a program, then all of a sudden now you do need to consider like, okay, well, what's the infrastructure that's going to be in place where people can access this? And, I've talked to a lot of yoga teachers where they were telling me they were running their group yoga programs on a Facebook group. And that's simple and easy. And great, but I kind of cringed a little bit inside because I was like, wait a minute, there's like so many options for you to make like a really amazing experience for your students. And Facebook groups isn't the platform that's going to support you in doing that. But you can't make those choices or start doing that research or even know that like where to go or what to look for if you first don't know and aren't clear on what it is you're offering. So, I get those questions from yoga teachers all the time, like what yoga platform or software do I need? And then what I've heard yoga teachers say is they get really overwhelmed because there are so many options. And so then they'll like go into a Facebook group and ask a bunch of yoga teachers like, well, what are you using? And then all the yoga teachers, because we're so helpful and we love sharing, are generous in offering like, well, I use this platform and I love it for this, but every single person has a different opinion. And so then like asking for help ends up overwhelming people even more because they don't know what is the best platform for me and what I need specifically. So it's like, but you need to know what it is you want to do first. And then you can start to like hone in on, okay, this platform is going to offer me the capabilities that I need to offer what I want to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's such a good point. And I feel like I even experienced that with one of the studios that I work with. We were looking to create a video platform, like a really organized, nice looking, searchable video platform to put our recorded classes on, like, from our live stream recorded classes and then doing some other ones that were more targeted. And we spent a long time doing market research on the different platforms. And it kept coming back to like, what do we need in a software? Like we have to understand what we need in a software to make a decision about a software, because there's so many different softwares out there for you that if you don't really understand what it is that you're actually trying to do or what you need in that platform, it's going to be hard to choose one. And then you're just going to be kind of like, people will give you a million suggestions and you're going to become totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. And not only what do you need now, and I know that this is hard, but kind of looking out at the future in like 3 to 5 years, what's your vision? Where do you want to go? What would you love to do that you're not doing right now, but has always been a dream of yours? And like the best example that I can give is, let's say you offer drop-in online yoga classes right now, but it's always been your dream to offer some type of program or even a teacher training or something like that. Knowing that that's like a dream of yours and having that vision in the back of your mind can also help you better understand like what platform is going to grow with me down the road. So what do I need right now? This software or platform is going to help me with what I need. But then if you choose a platform that gets you what you need now, but then cannot support you in helping you with where you want to go or your vision down the road, when you want to start offering that program or training or whatever it is, you're going to have to completely invest in a new platform and figure out and either like have 2 competing softwares or platforms or integrate one into the other or, transfer everything over from one place to the next. Like you're going to create a ton of work for yourself down the road if you're not thinking about kind of like more long-term, what are you envisioning growing into?
And now it's time for a short break from the show to talk about our sponsor, OfferingTree. If you're interested in finding an all-in-one platform for online or in-person teaching, then you should definitely check out OfferingTree. OfferingTree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one click, you can build a website, run online or in-person live classes, sell pre-recorded classes, manage memberships and packages, and much more. Communicating with your students is seamless and easy with their automated email system and email marketing tools. Already have your own website? No problem, because OfferingTree can embed seamlessly into your existing website. They're always adding new features to their platform to make it even better. They just recently released the online store feature that lets you easily sell digital content like yoga videos, challenges, and courses right from your website. If you're looking for a single platform to take care of all of your online and in-person teaching needs, then visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. Offering Tree has been supporting MBOM for over a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. Offering Tree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. That's offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive the discount. All right, now back to the episode. Absolutely. And so what are some of the online platforms that you have seen teachers using that they've had success with that are some of your top recommendations?
Yeah. So again, the way that I kind of look at it is, what is it that you want to be offering? So for just offering classes, drop-in classes, a couple have come up that I've seen a lot of teachers use. One is Punch Pass, which is a great option for integrating with Zoom, showing your class schedule, taking payments, keeping track of attendance, giving you a content library to organize your recorded classes. You can sell class packs just like you would in a studio. You can offer donation-based passes. And it kind of gives you everything you need to have like a really nice, just drop-in class and recorded video library. The other one that is an interesting newer offering on the market is Offering Tree. It allows you to kind of have your own website. It integrates an email management system, and it has a little bit more functionality in terms of helping you offer courses or challenges or memberships all in one place. So that's something that yoga teachers have found to be helpful as well. But then if you're looking for something where you do want to offer more trainings or courses or workshops, obviously Teachable is one that is popular. And also Thinkific is a little bit more customizable than Teachable for offering online courses or membership sites. And then NamaStream is a huge one, which again can give you that functionality to both offer drop-in classes and give you a recorded library, but also give you the functionality to offer something a little bit more in-depth in a course or a workshop. And then I personally use something called Access Ally, which is not something that I would necessarily encourage yoga teachers to start with unless you have a lot of tech familiarity and background, but it's actually a WordPress plugin, and it allows me to build all of the functionality and capabilities for me to offer my classes and my courses right on my website. So it's fully integrated and customizable, and it's not kind of like a separate platform that lives on someone else's site. It's all mine. And but again, that requires a lot more knowledge of tech and a lot more kind of playing around on the back end, which most yoga teachers don't really want to spend a long time learning, but I have fun with it. So
that's what matters, right? It's like knowing yourself and your business. And yeah, I love all of those platforms that you mentioned. So thank you for sharing those. And so I think moving from kind of the software, it's like, okay, you decide kind of what you're going to do, what you're going to offer. You choose a software platform to be on. And then the next thing we need to know is, what do we actually need to like film a class? What do we actually need to do a live stream class or create a course? Like, what's the actual tech piece behind that?
Yeah. So here's what I recommend to the yoga teachers that I mentor and work with. Start where you are, right? Like, yourself and your familiarity and comfort level with technology. So if all you is the video features that you have on your phone, if that's all you're comfortable with, or if you just don't really want to spend a lot in terms of investing in the technology. In terms of audio, AirPods or a wireless mic system are simple enough and not super expensive. And that can help you create a really nice audio experience. But also, if even that is too much of an investment, to be totally honest with you, I didn't start using an audio system until a few months ago. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was just using Zoom on my laptop with the audio that was on my laptop. I didn't have any microphone or anything, and nobody complained about like the quality of the audio. Was it amazing? No. Was it passable? Yes. So that's all I used. Since then, I have invested in a much better audio system. I got a lavalier mic and a recorder. This is getting a little bit more techy. It's also a lot more expensive. But again, I consider those investments. The audio quality of my videos is a million times better. But again, it wasn't like the audio of my laptop and Zoom was so bad that people couldn't understand what I was saying. You know, was there a little bit of static in the background? Sure. Was that going to ruin someone's day? Probably not. So, you know, I wouldn't get too caught up in trying to be perfect if tech is going to give you a huge headache and so much anxiety that you're not even going to start because you're just like spending months trying to figure out what's the right audio and video recording system. If you're utilizing Zoom and your laptop, there are 4K cameras that you can get relatively cheaply that attach right on top of your computer that offer widescreen or wide lens views. They're a little bit more expensive. We're talking like hundreds of dollars. But again, consider an investment if this is something that you're going to be doing long-term or want to be doing long-term. And they provide a much clearer picture quality than maybe what the video that's on your laptop would offer. But the video capability, especially if you have a newer iPhone, is pretty good. And the audio is not horrible if you're using, you know, the built-in audio for the phone or the laptop. But obviously you can level up by investing in a wireless or Bluetooth headphones like AirPods, or going and finding a lavalier mic and or a recorder. The problem with upgrading your audio to a recorder or a lavalier mic is that then you're going to have to do post-production and editing afterwards to, you know, make the final product look and sound good. Really high quality, you know, professionally produced audio and video. But again, if like that is just way too much, start with where you are. And as you get more comfortable doing it, and as you kind of see what else is out there on the market, you'll build your comfort level and become more confident in upgrading, but go slowly. And, you know, we're certainly not at the point yet where in the yoga industry, you have to be developing these professional sounding and looking videos to succeed. Sure, if you want to be on Yoga Glow or, you know, Yoga Download or some of these other platforms that feature videos, you need professional lighting, professional sound, professional video quality. But if you're just teaching your local community, you know, a lot of them are more than happy to take your Zoom classes with what you've got. So they're not looking for these professionally produced programs. Now, if you're going to be offering a larger priced program like a teacher training or some type of workshop, you might consider up-leveling some of the quality, especially if you're going to be asking for more money. But, you know, again, that just keeps going back to the same question of what is it that you want to offer? Who is it that you're offering it to? And what's your comfort level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing all of that. And I love the suggestion of like, you know, keeping it simple and kind of working with like where you're at. And I've shared this so many times on the podcast. I should really figure out who actually said this. I feel like it's the founder of LinkedIn, but something about how, like, if you don't look back on the first thing you created and cringe, then you haven't improved. And I really
So true.
feel like, yeah, as like any form of content creator, and that's the same as like the first yoga class we teach, ever is gonna feel like that. I'm sure we can all look back and really feel for like little baby yoga teacher us. And it's going to be the same thing with the first video you create, the first podcast episode you create, the first like online training you run, the first training you run in general. Like, you're always going to be looking at how you can make things better. So if we sit in this mentality of like, it needs to be perfect before I do it, we're probably never going to do it. Like, if you're continuously fussing with the video is not good enough, or the lighting's not good enough, or the space isn't right, or the audio doesn't sound perfect, then you're not going to get your classes out there. And the thing is that people want to practice yoga. You want to teach yoga. So instead of living in perfection, I think it's offering with where we're at and then continuously be open to improving. If you start with no audio, maybe it's like you invest in AirPods once you've, made your first $200 teaching online. And then from there, maybe you transitioned into, a higher tech mic. One that we've had a lot of success with the studios that I work with, because that was a headache and a half when it comes to taking businesses online. Working with studios was like trying to figure out the audio was so hard. And both
Especially
studios
in the
I work.
studio space, I bet, because like so much echo and
Yeah, 100% that, and how much wear and tear it was getting. So just because like both the studios I work with offer, about 30 classes,
so many classes.
Yeah, per week
Totally.
with different teachers. So it's going through so many different hands. It's being bumped around. There's yin classes where people are rolling on it. There's classes where teachers are doing handstand and it's falling off their shirts. Anyways, we ended up like breaking a bunch of mics between both studios, and
and they're not cheap.
No, they're not. It's a big investment. And we ended up, both of them use the Rode Wireless Go. We've had really good success with those. So that's the one that I recommend. It's a little bit more expensive than if you're just going to use your laptop or your iPhone, or even than AirPods. But it is such a good mic for teaching.
Yeah, I don't remember what mine is, the brand, and I just bought it. But I will send it to you afterwards so that you can, I love it. And again, like, it was not cheap. Like, this was a major investment for me. And I actually use like I mentioned, a recorder and a lavalier mic. So I record 2 different audio tracks and then I combine them together. Again, that's advanced, but it creates a little bit more of an ambient sound that sounds a little bit more natural. But yeah, I think that's also really important. What you said is like, what do you teach? If you're teaching like handstands and moving all over the place, you need to take that into consideration when it comes to like the tech that you're going to invest in, versus, if you're not moving around that much, like maybe you just teach meditation. Well, then you could probably use something else. So again, like, just starting with like being really clear with what it is you do will help guide you in the research and in making the decisions about the tech that's going to best support you in your business. But in terms of the perfection thing, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have filmed something where like the lighting that I use is in the frame and I didn't notice it. And sure, I get really frustrated when I see that after the fact, but I'm like, oh well, like, that's just what it's going to be today. It's not keeping people from seeing me. It's just like a tiny little bit in the side of the frame. It's not perfect, but I don't care. I'm not filming it again. That's what's going out. So, I was talking to a yoga teacher who also works in IT, and he said something to me that was really just like oh yeah. And he was like, when you work in IT, so these are people that deal with tech all day long, they just know and have this mentality that something is going to go wrong. Like, something is going to break. And so their whole mentality isn't that like, how do we create the most perfect product? It's like, how do we solve whatever is in front of us and do the best that we can with what we've got. And I was like, that's really useful as a yoga teacher, because it immediately takes away this myth of perfection. Like nothing is going to be perfect. Something's always going to go wrong with the audio. Something's always going to go wrong with the video. Like I just expect something to happen. And when something doesn't happen, it's like, oh, hey, great. Awesome. I don't have to deal with that. But if something does happen, then it's like, oh, well, either this isn't going to be like the most perfect expression of a beautiful background and wonderful audio with no issues, or maybe something's a slightly bit blurry. Again, if it's viewable, then it's going out. I don't get caught up in like the perfection piece anymore, because like you said, then it just won't happen. And it's better that it goes out than not going out at all. And then we learn our lessons along the way, and we have the opportunity to get better each and every time we go to film a class. Something that I learned really quickly, and this is back from my 2012 filming videos on YouTube days, plug everything in, plug your computer in, plug your camera in if you can. Anything that can be plugged into the wall and charging while you are using it, plug it in. Because I've had so many times when I was filming something and the camera died, or the computer died. And if I would have just plugged it in before the class started, I wouldn't have had that problem. But little tiny things like that we forget when there's so many different things going on, that I've picked up those little tips and tricks along the way, the little processes. I make sure everything's plugged in before I start and hit record.
Yes, that is a very, very excellent tip. We've definitely had that too with the studios. Like, oh, the microphone's dead. Thankfully, we have a backup one now, and a good procedure with the teachers of like, these are the things you need to do before you leave. And one of the things is plugging in the mic. So yes, I'm really grateful that you shared that tip. I know we have some more to talk about when it comes to social media and marketing. I think I want to take that conversation behind the scenes though. So why don't we wrap this up here? Can you share, Ashley, where people can go to find you, learn more about you, all of that good stuff?
Yeah. So I have two websites. One is inhalethrive.com, and that's where I share a lot of my stuff specifically for helping yoga teachers teach yoga online. And then the other is ashleyjosephine.com, and that's where I have all of my kind of public facing yoga practitioner practices and classes and things like that.
Amazing. I will make sure there's links to that in the show notes, as well as all of the tech pieces you recommended here. And thank you so much for all of this awesome information.
You're welcome. I love talking about this stuff. It's kind of the culmination of the business and yoga, marketing and yoga that I started my career with, and we're full circle back there again.
Yes, I love it as well. All right, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. Make sure you go check out Ashley Zuberi and everything that she's up to. She's got amazing resources for yoga teachers. And Ashley and I actually continued this episode of the show behind the scenes to talk about social media marketing and marketing your online yoga offerings. So I know that this is a key piece when it comes to creating a successful yoga business, and Ashley has some fantastic tips for this. So if you'd like to listen to that episode of the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/MBM Yoga. I'd love to have you there. And a huge thank you to Offering Tree for sponsoring this episode of the show. Make sure you go check them out at offeringtree.com/MBM. That gives you a little discount if you want to sign up for one of their paid plans. And of course, if you have any questions about anything that they offer, make sure you reach out to me or them and ask any questions that you have. Thank you so much to you for listening to this episode of the show. I couldn't do it without you. So thank you for tuning in and listening all the way to the end of the episode. I am so grateful that you're here, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.